This episode is sponsored by Kerkering Barberio, your trusted partner in tax, audit, and outsourced accounting services. Serving Sarasota, Manatee, and the greater Tampa Bay area for over 50 years, KB helps clients achieve their personal and business goals. Visit kbgrp.com to learn more. Hello and welcome to the Business Observer from the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Robert Hensley, president and CEO of Integrity Employee Leasing. Robert, thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure to be here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it'll be a good conversation because I want to talk about Integrity Employee Leasing. Let's start with that. You've done some other really interesting things too, and we'll get to in a second, but tell us what Integrity Employee Leasing is and what its niche is in the business community.
Great question. So Integrity Employee Leasing, when it originated, think competencies of payroll, processing, and workers' compensation. That's what I inherited when I got here. But now it's a little bit more than that. I would say that we're more of a human resource organization in totality for the complete life cycle of our clients' employees, beginning to end, whatever happens in between. And as much as you want us to deal with is who we are for you. Being here for a few years now, just celebrated year number 6, and realizing the growth in our industry and the things that were taking place, it was so obvious that there was this massive gap entrepreneurs were dealing with where they needed so much more than just payroll and workers' compensation. They needed daily help, monthly help, annual help in different forms. And I guess to directly answer your question, our niche is, what do you need us to be? Because that's where we come in behind you and your organization to fill that gap.
Well, because there's so many gaps, right, in terms of, small businesses, even medium size. I'm sure even you have large clients as well that, they're out doing their work, whether it's construction or, selling widgets, making widgets, servicing, that HR is a lot and it's more and more laws and regulations. So it sounds like you do all those things for the customers.
Well, not me personally, but I have a great group of folks out there that are really, really good at what they do, and they focus in on it, and they take care of those things. But and I mean, just look at the complexity and changes with all the laws, not only from a national level, but on a state level that are impacting us here in Florida. It's massive. And I almost feel bad for entrepreneurs on a daily basis, because how would you possibly keep up with every bit of changes coming your way? And by the way, you're responsible for it. Like, you are personally accountable as an entrepreneur to those things.
Yeah. So a good example of outsourcing. But you did some other things before that. You were in some franchise businesses, First Watch, restaurants, Taco Bell. Tell us about yourself. How did you get into that line of work, and what were some of the things you did?
So go back to 1984. I'm a young teenager, and I start my first job at Burger King, and I fall in love with the process. If you listen to kids today, who doesn't go to fast food and sneak in a sandwich, whatever it is? And so I'm always watching. I can't help but watch. It's my life's blood of what I did. But being at a young age, I realized what an impact I made in people's lives. Some people every single day. There's some people that visit restaurants 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, because that's where they get that meal, that quick relationship. Oh, I know your face. It's good to see you again. I go back to Cheers, right? Who didn't want to be known at the Cheers, right? So being young, I could see that people depended on us to do a great job to make a hamburger or to make a French fry or to make the soda right. And I say that with the most sincerity possible, because those things made a difference to me. I wanted you to have the perfect hamburger. I wanted you to have the perfect French fry or taco or whatever I was doing, or donut at that time, because I was putting my name on it. And that was hugely important to me, because you were going to have that whole experience that goes along with it. You can take that concept and broaden it into any entrepreneurial endeavor that you want to go after, because if you don't care what's your value, what are you really performing at that time? So being in the fast food environment and having hundreds of transactions per day, dealing with 20 employees at a time, that then led to dealing with 500 employees and multiple direct reports. There's a life to be had in there that got me to where I am today. I just had to pay attention along the way.
Yeah. So I'm curious though. So you go into that mindset. You're a teenager, and you talk about, you mentioned little kids today, right? And you and I are, I think, of similar age, and our kids are a little bit older, and you get into this like, kids today, they don't have the work ethic. How did you have that work ethic when you were a teenager? Was it something your parents instilled in you, and what sort of led you to be that perfectionist employee as a young man?
Well, being the oldest child helped, certainly. I think that those of us that are the oldest children in the family environments, we get that, but it's just the expectation that comes along with it. But beyond that, I had two parents that knew nothing but to work hard and to do their best all the time. My mother stayed at home until we became teenagers. It was important for her that she was there when we came home from school, that she watched us through that process and she got us as far as she could with what she had. And then it was important for her to start a career when we became teenagers. Mom, on that side, one of my greatest mentors of all time. She has OCD to the nth degree because she wants it just like that. When her name is on it, it's got to be right. Watching that for all of those years, and by the way, she runs our insurance department here at Integrity here today. I want to mention her age because if she hears this, I might get in trouble. But
We don't
I'm
need to do that.
I'm 55 if that helps, right? And so fantastic what she does. Dad, on the people side of the business, I could watch him interact because he was the franchisee at Burger King that I started at, right? He came from a corporate environment that became a franchisee. And watching your parents interact with all of these different people all day long and become a success story from nothing, I remember being impressed as a teenager. And I remember seeing, I want to be like that. I want to take those steps and make a difference.
And then at some point you became a franchisee. Is that correct? What were some of the brands you owned, and how did you grow in that side of your career?
So in 1990, I decided I was going to move from Cleveland to Sarasota because I wanted to live in Florida. And I think at that time I had a whopping $250 in my pocket and some clothes in a bag in the back. And we had some family members down here. So I came down and I got started. I was so fortunate. I got started with Tromble and Company at that time here in Port Charlotte, and they were the Taco Bell franchisees. And I kid you not, I pull up to a restaurant that was now hiring out front. And I saw a Corvette in the drive-thru early in the morning, and they were putting up those window stickers on the side of the restaurant. And I thought, that's got to be the owner, right? So I just pulled up and I said, don't you pay somebody to do that for you? She said, it might be you tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So I showed up for my interview. And 6 years later, we had built 50 restaurants from the Keys to Sebring to Busch Gardens. We had this massive geography. And the learning curve during that period of time, you had no choice. It was sink or swim because we were moving at a pace that was not going to stop. That career led into other franchises, including Dunkin Donuts, which was the last franchise I was with. And we also did First Watch restaurants, where I was the first franchisee in the Miami-Dade area. We started building the restaurants there. Fantastic, wonderful concept. And you pull something away from each entity because each of those entities has a different philosophy, a way to go about things. And collectively, over 25, 30 years, I've made my mistakes, right? I stepped into the scenarios that I had to step into and deal with it. And you walk away with those mistakes now with everything on your shoulder and your successes and say, okay, I'm ready to do more. I'm ready to do something different. And after 30 years of being in the restaurant business, that taught me so much. And I still, if you let me, I'd get behind the counter, I'd make a sandwich. I'd wait on some customers. You still have that drive that you want to do. But I'm able to do that here now. And I'm able to support franchisees, and I'm able to support small business owners that have 2 or 3 employees. I have business owners that have 2,000 employees.
Yeah. So you talked about some, mistakes that you've learned from. What stands out in your mind as a setback, a mistake, an error that has been a life lesson for you since then at any stage in your career?
Boy, pick one, right? I think that your big mistakes, they evolve with your personal growth. And I remember being a young leader wanting to make every leader behave like I behaved, to act like I acted, to do things when I did things, and to do it like I did it. It took me a long time to realize that that was foolish. It was foolish because if you want a bunch of Roberts in one area, all you're going to have is Robert. And Robert's got a lot of downsides. Robert has a lot of failures. So Robert has a lot of blind spots that he doesn't see. It took me until I was probably in late 20s, early 30s before I realized You need a different group of people around you with different skill sets, like-minded. I want you to think like me, but I want you to have different skills. I want you to see things different. And when you start doing that, your world changes and you can become more successful.
Yeah, it's an interesting. You have to learn that almost through doing, right? Through
All
experience.
day.
My editor, Kat Wingard at the Observer Media Group, said to me years and years ago, when I was promoted to more editing more stories and supervising more people, to be pragmatic, right? And that meant a lot to me. But that was for me. I still use that lesson today because not everybody's going to do something the story the way that I would have done it or handle the situation the way I would have done it. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just not my way. But be pragmatic about it and understand that that way is okay. As long as they have your vision and mindset for quality and success.
Yeah, all day. Absolutely right.
Yeah. What are some? So you've been a leader of a lot of different organizations. What are some of the best parts about being a leader, and what are some of the most challenging parts for you?
Dad always said producing producers is the greatest thing that you can do as a leader. If you can take what resides already in people and I'll use the word exploit, but I mean it the best way possible. You reach into them because sometimes they don't even know that they have it. They don't have a clue. They're clocking in, they're clocking out, they're doing their best, but you see these spurts of greatness come out of people. And you have to latch on to that. You have to observe it, which means you have to be with your people, right? You can't be in we're calling this the corner office, but you can't stay in that corner office all day. And when you see that,
Yeah.
you have to nourish it. You got to nurse it. You got to feed it. You got to get them to focus on it. And then something beautiful happens. This flower comes out of somebody and they go, I got this. Get out of my way. Let me show you what we're going to do next. Our processing manager is a prime example of that. When I got here 6 years ago, she was a secretary to secretary. I don't know what her role was when I got here. But after about 6 months of watching her, I go, she needs to be leading the largest department that we have. And she said, what business do I have running a payroll department? I said, you don't know how good you are. Let's go get this done. She leads our largest group, and she is loved by our clients and her people. You couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah. Amazing as a leader to see that grow. And what's the most challenging part for you as a leader, to be a leader in leadership?
Watching that flower grow. Sometimes you just want to reach across that desk and yank the flower out, but you can't do that. Some people learn on the second time, the third time. Some people learn on the 12th time. The patience required for that, and not just the patience, you have to supply the skill sets around that person while they're growing. You have to protect them from failures until they're able to do it on their own. It's no different than teaching your kids to walk. Don't stick your finger in there. Don't do that, right? They're going to do it every once in a while anyway. It's going to hurt. That's part of growth.
Yes.
But as a leader, I have one job. It's to give you the tools and the resources that you need to be great at what you do. Because if I picked you or I left you in a position, your success is on me. I'm responsible for you, and I want you to be great. So watching that happen, waiting for it to happen, and protecting them while it happens, that can be frustrating.
Totally understandable. What's a standout piece of leadership advice you've received? Maybe it's from your parents or just from other people within your life, organization, career. What's a piece of standout advice?
A piece of standout advice. Oh, wow. Letting people do what they do without interfering as a leader is probably one of the greatest things that you can do. I think sometimes we inhibit our people with our own ideas and our own passions instead of allowing the people that we've selected to do that job, to build that widget or whatever it is, to let them come to you and say, this is what success looks like and this is why. And not stopping them during that process, keeping your mouth shut, being supportive. As a leader, that's hard to do because we fought our whole lives to get here. So we have an opinion about everything.
Yep.
I have an opinion about your job, and I have no business having an opinion about your job because that's what I do. Right? So allowing those people to flourish and to get there, you have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. We can pontificate about a lot as leaders, right? You mentioned your parents, kind of what you learned from them. I was going to ask you who your mentors were and one or two things you learned from them. Are there other mentors in your life that stand out in your mind, and what have you learned from them?
That's a question I get often, and I offer my time to young men that are in the business world because I never had one business leader walk up to me and say, Robert, I think you're going to be good, or I think you could be special, or I think you can do something. Let me show you what I did. It didn't happen, not once in 30 plus years of doing it. In addition to that, most of the supervisors that I had were unimpressive. They were, I sat sometimes and wondered how they got into the role that they got into. And I don't want to seem overly negative, but I do want to drive home the point that when you're looking at a mentor, you can also be looking at the things that you don't want to do. When you get the opportunity to sit in that seat and make those decisions, you know that you don't want to be that guy or that gal or that decision because it had such a negative, huge impact across your world, right? So I try to keep that in mind a lot. And without, going off the deep end too deeply, every day you'll find me reading scripture whenever possible. Now, we all know how people feel about the Bible and Old Testament, New Testament, all those things. But let me tell you something, that book's been around for a long time and it's lasted. And regardless of what your personal opinions are, there are so many managerial lessons throughout that book that you can take away and be great about. You can do something with it and be wonderful. And you'll never learn everything that's in there. On the secular side, I've been a Ken Blanchard fan since the 90s. He's so simple in how he describes things. And as a leader, you have to be reading all the time. And I really don't care what you're reading. You have to have your mind into something so that you're building it. One of the things about this position is it can be very lonely. It's lonely at the top. You have to make decisions that are going to be not great for some people, great for others, and you have to find what's great for everybody across the board. So gaining that wisdom, seeing how things have played out for other leaders historically, other countries, locally, also very important because you get these other perspectives that otherwise you would never get. And so when you're sitting at that desk and you're on your own and you have to make that big decision, that multi-million-dollar decision, at least you've obtained some wisdom along the way to help you do that. And I think that that's just vitally important to be great.
Totally. It reminds me of a funny line I heard from a CEO of a manufacturing company in Sarasota years ago who said that he didn't like the restaurant, the Cheesecake Factory, because all day long he made decisions and the menu at the Cheesecake Factory was too big for him. He didn't want to make a decision when he went out to eat. He's like, all I do, somebody asked him, same thing you just said, what do you do as a CEO? I make decisions. That's it. I don't even know. I get information. I make decisions. And he's like, I don't want to make decisions anymore when I'm out. So not that you said exactly that, but that reminded me of that. Excellent. Go back to Integrity Employee Leasing. What else can we expect from the company? What's coming up the rest of 2024 and into 2025?
Well, being it's our 20th year in place, and I've been here. Now, I've been here as president for 6 years, but 10 years prior to that, I was a client. That's how I got involved with Integrity Employee Leasing. I was a client of this company for a decade, multiple states, hundreds of employees. Integrity was always there for me at whatever capacity I wanted them to be there for me. We're going to make some big announcements over the next couple of weeks. We are moving our main office into another building where it will be very difficult for you to drive through Charlotte County and not recognize Integrity Employee Leasing at the top of the building, which we're super excited about. We've grown to well over 50 employees now. We've been busting at the seams, and my employees have been so patient as we are taking on more space that we've so desperately needed. I just didn't want to make the wrong move. When you move your organization, you want it to be right the first time, and you want your people to love it in the process. Because let's face it, people have a difficult time of transition. It's not looking forward to the future that people have difficulty with. It's letting go of the past and the comfortability that goes along with it. So as you're selecting a site, as you're developing a new office, you got to sell it to these guys because they got to believe in that decision that you're making also, that it's the best for all of us. And I've got 2 partners that I'm accountable to that want to know that we're making the right financial decisions. And I believe 100% in everything that we've decided. So we've expanded into multiple states this year. We've grown internally. I think we brought on every piece of software that I could think of that's going to help our clients be successful. Much to be announced in the next few weeks.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, Robert, we got 3 more. These are going to be rapid fire questions for you, a little bit off topic. But
okay.
We're going to start with number 1. What is the most used app on your phone?
The most Snapchat. My kids and my grandkids are on Snapchat. So if I want to communicate with my grandkids, that's where it's at.
Love it. What are you, like grandpa? Like, what's your name? Like,
Papa. So PAPAW.
But that's awesome, though. You're such a cool pop-up because you're on Snapchat. I'm not on Snapchat, so good
All
for
day.
you on that. That's
All
high
day,
tech.
yeah. Absolutely. I don't like to look at the banking app because I never know what's going to be in there.
Don't do that. Yeah, stay away from
Right.
that. Or do
This week too.
do that kind of thing on Monday when you're like grumpy anyway because it's Monday. I don't know.
Right.
That's
Right.
My, you know. Okay, what is a bucket list trip that you'd like to go on with your family or by yourself? Doesn't have to be with your family, but you might want to take the grandkids. But what's a bucket list trip you'd like to go on?
But I already alluded to how I like to read. If I could get to the Middle East, I would travel everywhere through the Middle East. I would love to go through Israel. I would love to go to Egypt. I would love to see history as it played out in my mind. And the Mediterranean, I guess, also. We did one of these little things last year. We went to Alaska, and we took some of the kids and the parents and my wife and I, and that was one of those trips. And what else do you want to do in life but spend time with your family and enjoy that? So going out there with my wife would be fantastic.
Awesome. That would be a great trip. And last question, how many unread emails do you have right now?
0. Unless you're counting since the time we've been talking.
No, I like it. We're mid-morning in early August and you have 0. You're an inbox 0 guy. I like it.
That's one of those tick things. No, but that's how we communicate today, right? So it's text message, it's Snapchat, it's email, and sometimes decisions need to be made quickly, and a phone call isn't necessary, but the text comes across. I think it'd be irresponsible if I had 3 sitting in there. That would drive me nuts. I assume that you sent me a message because you need a response, and I want to get you what you need. Supply tools and resources. That's what I do.
Fantastic. Robert Hensley, Integrity Employee Leasing, thank you so much for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
Sir, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordy. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.